Welcome to Titan HST's Business Continuity Today, hosted by Todd DeVoe, where planning meets reality.
Good morning, everybody. Hey, welcome to Business Continuity Today. This is your host, Todd DeVoe speaking, and today we're going to talk about the resilient mindset for business continuity and why, right? Well, it's a couple of things. The goal of business continuity management is to ensure that important business processes are not only interrupted temporarily, right, if when a disaster happens, right? We want to stop this to be not interrupted at all. Right. So even critical situations, and to ensure that the economic existence of the organization, even after the occurrence of a serious damage, right? Poof, that is basically what we're talking about here. So, like I like to start with quotes. Today as never before, the fates of man is so intimately linked to one another that a disaster for one is a disaster for everybody. Natalie Ginsburg. So, what's that mean? That we are a world, global economy, global business. It doesn't make a difference if you're in education, if you're in high finances, if you're in manufacturing, lumberyard. Doesn't make a difference what business you have. Global implications happen when a disaster occurs. And we're feeling this right now with the COVID, right? The worldwide pandemic, supply chains are down. Today you go to Target, Walmart, whatever. Some of the shelves are not as full as they used to be. So most business continuity experts, if not primarily, are exclusively concerned about establishing the ability to recover after a serious incident or disaster. And so technically, I suppose we're still in the middle of the response phase with COVID because we haven't figured out how to fix this yet, right? I know that we're close to having a vaccine and whatnot, but we really need to start the recovery process prior when we're in the middle of the response, right? So on the business continuity and resiliency side, we need to start thinking about that the minute that we have a crisis that occurs. So let's discuss the value of resilience. So what is resiliency? It's very much a hot topic right now. It's a kind of a buzzword, if you will, around the world, in emergency management and business continuity. But there seems to be a little agreement of exactly what it means to be resilient. So resiliency is more proactive and a holistic approach to preparing. And before an incident occurs, the organization must strive to survive incidents that would otherwise take it down. And so there are two definitions that I really like to use when I discuss resiliency. And it realistically comes from ecology. So the ecological resilience. And it's the first time that we started looking deeply into what it means to be resilient, what a resilient organization or organism is, not an organization, although it does apply. So it's defined as the amount of disturbance that the ecosystem could withstand without changing the self-organized procedures and structures. And so if you take the term from ecology or ecosystem, if you will, and use it liberally, right, apply it to different things, you could use the idea of an ecosystem as replace it with the word community. So if the community or organization or business is the ecosystem, you apply that same definition, right? Is that the amount of disturbance that an ecosystem, or let's say an amount of disturbance that a community or the amount of disturbance that an organization would withstand without change in self-organized process and structures. So the other thing that we use is the idea of economic resiliency. The National Association of Counties describes economic resiliency as the community's ability to foresee, adapt to, and leverage changing conditions to their advantage. So the U.S. Economic Development Administration says comprehensive economic development strategy contends there's a guidelines with resiliency and these three primary attributes: the ability to recover quickly from shock, the ability to withstand shock, and the ability to avoid shock altogether. Right? And so what is shock? Shock is the disturbance in the ecosystem. Shocks may include downturns in the national global economy, such as the Great Recession that we had, the downturns that we're having today with the economic issues with COVID, climate change, etc. So we have to be thinking about those things when we're doing our plans. Business continuity management should take a look at resiliency in a couple different ways. So as we've been talking about this, is that with business continuity planning specifically, and using that plan to make decisions across your business or organization structure. So the goal of business continuity management is to ensure that the important business processes still work. So this begs the question: is resiliency important enough to invest time, effort, and money into achieving it? If the organization does not invest in business continuity planning, this is where you will not survive. We've talked about the fact that businesses are closing down. Big businesses. Starbucks has closed 400 something shops. So it's not just impacting small businesses, it's impacting big businesses. So few would argue that business continuity is not necessary. However, how much time and money should the organization invest, and how do we invest it wisely? So let's look at the key concerns in resiliency for business continuity. One is incident management. So the key to a resilient incident management system is establishing teams and a common operating procedure. And you have to be flexible. You have to be able to pivot by adopting and adapting the plans and protocols, not being rigid, and keeping a forward-looking mindset and anticipate the decisions making model. And this is why I stress on the concept of using your emergency operations plan and your business continuity plan in your daily business decision making processes. Not just to make a plan and put it on the shelf because it looks good. You need to have a resilient strategy. You need to take the approach a step further, and by deliberately designing and organizing the inherent strong and reliable issues that you can. The resilient organization is going to be able to shrug off various incidents, right, that might otherwise destroy or cancel, if you will, a less resilient organization. The implications of a strong, resilient strategy is that you will survive and thrive during a disaster. So becoming resilient, how do we get there? First, you need to have your administration, your top level people backing it, right? Write the business case for why you need to have resiliency. Once you take this and take the concepts and take the approach to this, write a good case for why you need to invest in the resiliency program. Develop that approach, right? Make it part of your business continuity plan. Doesn't have to be separate plans. Integrate it. Make it part of it. Design your business continuity plan with resiliency in mind. Create the framework, right? Create those step-by-steps where people can pick up that binder, look at it every day, make it part of the business decision-making model, and make it part of what your organization is. It should not be something separate. It should really be part of the fabric of what you do. And roll it out. Make sure everybody from the lowest level employee to the CEO to your city manager to the president of the United States, whoever you're working for, understands what resiliency is and how it impacts the daily rollout. And repeat and improve. constantly taking a look. A good friend of mine always tells me that anything that you do, right, is worth measuring, right? If it's worth your time, it has to be able to be measured. And Robert R. Robinson, who writes a lot about business continuity and resilience, describes a process like this as far as measuring things. You need to extend the risk register to allow resilience to be included, right? So it's part of your risk analysis, and resiliency should be included in that. Quantify the cost of the contribution, allowing the return on investment to be estimated. Associated the register entries that will assist allowing their resilience to be measured, right? Every level on your company needs to have resiliency added into it. And how do you measure it at each level? And define performance indicators on the resilience attributes. We discussed the definition of resiliency, and realistically, we're going to maximize the return on investment and risk and continuity over and above what we think about our obligations are. We need to create a culture of preparedness and resiliency. We need to have a resilient appetite if we're going to manage this effectively. Resilience is an added value process. But the question is, how much money do we invest in this? You have to have a target. You have to have measurements. You have to have a management tool set that allows us to directly understand and record inherent and planned resilience, tangibles and intangibles, so we can map this and actually have a return on investment to understand on the economic side of what we're doing and how our resilient strategy is working for our business. Business continuity has to adopt resilience as a preferred way forward. And however, I think there's a strong overlap with resiliency and crisis management that were resolved differently by different organizations. And so we really need to be adding that resilience component to each section of what we do in emergency management and business continuity and response. For me, the need for resilience is best expressed by the ecology definition that I offered earlier. Your organism is an ecosystem. And that ecosystem needs to embrace the reality that no matter what they do, there will be disasters. I mean, we're living through the world's largest one since World War II. Preparing your resilient efforts and for business continuity will ensure that we'll maintain objectivity and critical focus that might otherwise be lost within risk as a whole. Thank you so much for being with us today. Please visit Titan HST for all your communications needs. And remember, follow us on your favorite podcast player, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and join us next week. And remember, stay safe and stay hydrated.